Kia ora e te whānau. Welcome to the New Zealand Institute of Building. That's us. And this is our light lunch. And today we've got two virtual guests. I'm very pleased to welcome you, Melanie Tristram from JazzMax. Now, Melanie is the Digital Delivery Lead and Associate Principal at JazzMax in Auckland. And we have Glenn Jowett from Becca. And Glenn is the Technical Director, Digital Engineering Advisory at Becca, also in Auckland, if I'm correct. Hence the online perspective for our light lunch today. Cool, welcome both of you. And we are doing our wonderful format of three fairly useful industry tidbits and then three very interesting, more personal tidbits. So we'll start off with what's keeping you awake at night. Mel, what's your first thing?
For me, it would be the skill shortage within our industry, and that can be quite widespread. But for me, it's really looking at that BIM and digital space. And it's interesting that it's not only within the design sector that we're having that issue, it's across the construction side as well. That kind of then ties into the retention of those staff. We've had those couple of years of COVID, and now we've got people who are wanting to head overseas and they're taking that experience with them. But yeah, it's been quite tough trying to find replacement staff.
Oh no, that reeks of brain drain. If only we could reverse the tide.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Glenn, how does that line up with the first thing keeping you awake at night?
Very, very similar. I've described it as the hyper-constrained resource pool in this very niche area of digital in New Zealand. The people are just not readily available in the New Zealand market. We've had challenges, obviously, with things like COVID and immigration restrictions, which have not helped this challenge. What we're doing at Becca is we're trying to combat this by essentially trying to build from the ground up. So working really closely with universities and polytechs and aiming to hire and nurture that digital talent in New Zealand. So there's a top tip for one thing that keeps me awake at night for everybody listening.
Nice. And I like that you've come up with a tip or a call to action. We spoke recently with the folks at ARA, which is Te Pukenga in Canterbury, about a BIM course that they're doing, which they're translating into a 6-week online course that can be done by anyone around the country. So do you see that as one way to create more widespread digital skills in our industry?
Yeah, definitely. There's a requirement on the education side to provide these courses, and then I think there's a requirement on our side as designers and contractors and QSs to essentially bring back the apprenticeships and train the next generation of our leaders.
Nice. Anything you'd add in there, Mel?
No, just it's great to see that ARA has taken that step forward. We've both, Glenn and I, have had conversations with Mazar, who's been leading that. So it's great to actually see it getting off the ground.
Great. It's all very interconnected, this BIM digital world, isn't it? Hey, Melanie, what's the second thing keeping you awake at night?
So you probably look at the three of mine that I'll be talking about are quite interlinked, but this one is more around the knowledge and level of understanding around what BIM can mean to different people. Looking at RFPs that have been coming out from clients' level of understanding about what they're asking for, ensuring that each of the consultants that have been procured against the same scope, and making sure that those are aligned. And then when a contractor has been brought on board is again making sure that they understand what the consultants have been required to deliver and that they are actually being able to deliver to the client's needs. There's still a lot to be learned within the industry, and that's at all levels.
Got it. If someone was looking for a textbook template digital scope of services, where would they go?
There's a fair amount of information within the New Zealand BIM handbook, which both Glenn and I were involved in writing, which is going to be going under a little bit of a review in the coming months to include the ISO 19650. But there's also, of course, there's the DigiCom, the conference that we're going to be having in March, and there's going to be a lot of good learnings to come out of that with the clients and consultants been talking.
Awesome, and we'll include some links to the BIM handbook with this recording. Glenn, your second thing keeping you awake at night, and I'm sure acronyms or numbers like ISO 19650 could be in there. That would keep me awake at night. Can you tell us a bit more about that and what else is keeping you awake?
The acronyms in this industry keep me awake at night as well.
Yeah.
ISO 19650, that's the international standard for information management using BIM, and it's been around for 4 or 5 years now. The second thing keeping me awake at night is, again, quite similar to Mel's, but perhaps a bit more of a deep dive on the specific topic, and that's the misalignment of procurement processes, again, relating to BIM or digital engineering. So design teams are often procured simultaneously. So you'll have one designer typically nominated to lead the BIM or digital engineering process, and they'll all be procured at the same time. And what this does is it results in misaligned scopes of service, because what happens is typically the first task for the BIM manager is to work with the client to firm up the requirements of the client and the project. So from day dot, the scopes are completely misaligned. This can impact things like quantity surveyors. They'll have signed up their scope, assuming that they can use the designer's 3D models to support their estimates, only to be told by the design team, sorry, you can't use that because we weren't procured to provide that information to you. So it's a very, very significant challenge in the industry. And again, what we are trying to do to combat that is just trying to work with our clients to support them in actually understanding the process. Again, referencing things like the New Zealand BIM Handbook and ISO 19650. And often when we act as client-side advisors, we try and encourage them to procure those digital roles early on in the piece so they can help firm up their requirements, and then make sure the design team are procured, all for aligning scope of service.
Awesome. It's really great to hear how many times you say the word client, because I think the human-centered kind of design principles, well, it sounds like they're alive and well in your workplace, but I think as an industry, we could do a lot more client-centered work. So can you tell us a little bit about what happens at the start of a project in terms of that client-centered perspective to really dig into the actual problem to solve?
Yeah, look, we'd typically work with the client and facilitate essentially a workshop, a bit of a show and tell, a bit of a look back of their projects and their lessons learned to try and understand what their challenges are. Their challenges could be as simple as facing the same cost and program overruns time and time again on a project, although they could be as complex as we have these asset operators that have all these information requirements that we just don't get delivered. And the reason we don't get it delivered is because we write one line in the scope of services that says as built an asset information. So we work with them to try and tease that out in a bit more detail to make sure that the supply chain that's responding to the tenders has as much information as possible to submit an informed response.
Cool. Okay, Mel, what's your third thing keeping you awake at night?
This is a little bit lighter, but it has a lot of meaning to myself and to my team, is that work-life balance. So that's looking, kind of ties into that skill shortage. We're starting to grow within our company, the team that's delivering BIM, but making sure that there is that balance between their personal life and work, so that they've got that energy to carry on through. With those last couple of years of COVID, with the lockdowns, people had a very blurred line between what was home and what was work. And with us continuing to work from home, which is where I am today, you're still getting that merge, but we're still trying to make sure that everybody's got that nice, again, the balance between having the work stuff and home, but being able to grow them and making sure they're all happy. It's all about retaining staff and growing them. So that's probably a big one for me.
Cool. Well, and we'll dig into some of that wellbeing stuff in a minute. But Glenn, the third thing keeping you awake, is there something else amongst all that?
Yeah, the third thing for me is that there's a need to do more for less. And I think as an industry, we're in a bit of a perfect storm right now. We've spent decades essentially trying to win the race to the bottom in terms of costs and fees. We've got this resource pool and this skill shortage that both myself and Mel have touched on. That's just not growing quick enough. And there's a need to start to deliver more. Clients are asking us to provide more information, more detail to deliver within tighter timeframes. And to do this, we really need to innovate as an industry, and we need to collaborate. So again, we're trying to combat this by embracing automation. So seeing what tasks we can automate to do more for less. Look at how we can innovate in our delivery approaches and how we can truly collaborate with our project partners to really focus on that need, because I think it's something that's only going to become more challenging as time goes on.
Nice. Well, I'm starting to get the feeling that we're very awake most of the night with all these things that are going on. So let's quickly just remember that this is a light lunch and dip into some of our lighter hearted questions. So Glenn, I'll start with you. What's one thing that you're reading or listening to or watching that you want to share with us?
I'm actually reading a book about the history of curry at the moment.
Okay.
The cuisine.
Yes, I'm glad you clarified. Okay, good. Okay, this could lead to something. But I will just jump quickly to Mel. What are you reading, listening, or sharing with us?
I've just before Christmas, I finished the Seven Sisters series of books, and been reading the Evelyn Hugo and Seven Husbands book, which is quite an entertaining read.
All right. Okay. Well, it sounds like we need to have one a little bit more. Glenn, what's something that you do for yourself for your own well-being that might be useful for people listening?
Leads on from the first point. I actually really love to cook, and the more complex the dishes, the better. It really helps me clear my mind. And curry is one of the cuisines I cook a lot of from scratch. Wow,
it definitely sounds complex. And Mel, what about you and well-being?
A similar one there to Glenn, but instead of the savoury, it's the sweet. I enjoy doing a lot of baking. It's my happy place in the kitchen, which isn't probably a good thing for a female to say. But yeah, my family enjoy all of these spoils that come out of the kitchen for sure.
Wow, that sounds awesome. Clearly we're coming to your place for Glenn first and then to Melanie. Hey, Glenn, just to round us up, what is your motto, or what's the gift that you want to give the people who are listening in today? Really interested in what drives you.
I had a mentor, going back 7-8 years now, and he's still a very good friend of mine. And he taught me that to be successful as an individual, you really need to help those around you be successful. So you need to succeed as a group. And that's something I try and sort of practice on a daily basis, really, is focus on making sure those around me succeed. And if they succeed, then my personal success will follow.
And it won't be so lonely. Yeah.
That's right.
And Mel, what about you and mottos?
I was thinking about what it was last year leading up to Christmas, and it was pretty much just keep swimming. It was trying to get to the end of the year to have that reboot. But this year, it's more about not being busy, but being productive. So making sure that there's outcomes or to anything that I'm doing. So it's not just about keeping myself busy.
Nice. I think quoting Dory is a great way to round out a light lunch, given that some people are probably off to eat some Dory. Thank you both very much. I'll just finish off with a couple of messages. You did both mention, I think, the BIM and NZ event, which is the Building Our Digital Community, or DigiCom, which is coming up on the 23rd of March. We're tracking super well on that. We've got to about halfway through our registrations and we're full up on our sponsorship, so that's really cool. We've also got Industry Insights, which is where we do a deep dive with an international expert and we invert it so the questions come up front. Our next one is on the 2nd of March with Sam Archer from the Green Building Council and Antonia Reid from Building for Climate Change at MB, our Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment. So 2 of our previous Industry Insights are on our YouTube channel. One was with Amy Marks, who's a keynote at DigiCom, and the other one with Daryl Patterson, who has just spent about 25 odd years at Lendlease and Lendlease Digital in particular. So you can find those on our YouTube. And last but not least, our light lunch. Our next one is coming up in 2 weeks' time at 12:30, same place, same time. And we'll have 2 more wonderful BIM and NZ steering group members. We'll have Kerry Niven from Oricon and Andrew Field from Becca, who's over at Waka Kotahi at the moment. So that's us for today. Thank you very much, Mel. Thank you, Glenn. And we're all looking forward to seeing you both at DigiCom at the end of the March. And for everyone else, thanks for listening. You can find this on YouTube, and there'll be a bunch of credits and information so you can dig up some of those links that both Mel and Glenn have mentioned. Thank you, and ka kite anō.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Ben.